Korea. I hope you had a pleasant flight here to Korea. My name is Serena Huang, and I'll be your MC for the day. I also hope that you had a delightful brunch at the Yeongbingwan as well. So today's summit is hosted by Memory Business of Samsung Electronics, and on behalf of Samsung, it is an honor to be among international media leaders and the most influential bloggers across the globe. We will be holding various sessions with Samsung SSD, and we'll get to watch some great performances throughout the day, so we hope that you'll stay with us until the very end. First, we will begin with a welcoming address by Eun-soo Kim. He is the Senior Vice President of Brand Product Marketing Team. Please give him a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eun-soo Kim. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today at the Samsung SSD Global Summit. Welcome, and welcome all. I am very glad to have this opportunity to share our vision and plan for how we will continue to provide leadership in this industry. In the past few years, we have seen a tremendous increase in data-driven decision-making. The emergence of big data has focused companies around the world on this new area. And this has clearly driven higher demand for more servers and more storage. At the same time, 3D V-NAND flash memory is creating waves in this new market. And the SSD has become an important solution for the enterprises and consumers. This year alone, the SSD market will grow more than 30%. If the market continues to grow annually by 25%, we expect it will be over 20 billion by 2017. As you know, Samsung has been continuously communicating through the SSD Global Summit about our SSD leadership and technology innovations. And we have discussed what we will do in the future. This has always been a meaningful opportunity for us. Last year's summit was about creating SSD for everyone, which paved the way for the widespread adoption of SSDs. Today, I'm pleased to announce the 3D V-NAND SSD that is truly future-driven, a product that will take the SSD performance to new heights. Our 3D V-NAND SSD that we present today is a leading product that aims to deliver everything the slogan suggests. The new breed of performance. In closing, let me say this. Samsung will continue to drive the SSD market with new innovations that cater to the changing market needs. I hope the information and the discussion at this summit is meaningful and clearly outlines our vision for the industry. Again, on behalf of Samsung, I want to thank you all for being with us, and I wish you a pleasant stay here in Korea. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Mr. Kim, for your welcome speech. The 2014 Samsung SSD Global Summit will be divided into two sessions. In the first session, Jim Elliott, Vice President of Memory Marketing, and Kei-hyun Kyung, Senior Vice President of Flash Design Team, will be giving presentations. In the second session, we will be presenting the new lineup of the 2014 Samsung SSD products, and the session will be presented by Koo Young-jung, Manager of Brand Product Marketing Team. So let's begin the first session with a presentation by Vice President Jim Elliott titled IT Market Trends, Senior Vice President Kei Young regarding 3D V-NAND, the future of flash, will follow right after. And lastly, the Samsung SSD leadership presentation by Jim Elliott will continue. Please welcome presenters with a warm round of applause.
안녕하십니까, 손님 여러분. 저는 삼성전자 반도체 메모리 마케팅 상무 짐 엘리엇입니다. 다시 만나서 반갑습니다. 저는 삼성에서 13년째 몸을 담고 있습니다. 저는 한국어를 2년 중 배웠습니다. 매일매일 일이 많아서 바쁘지만 한국어를 일주일에 3번 공부하고 있습니다. 제 생각에 한국어는 어렵지만 재미있습니다. 오늘 프레젠테이션을 모두 다 한국어로 말하고 싶지만 지금부터 영어로 하겠습니다. 감사합니다. Good afternoon, everybody. Much more comfortable for me, hopefully more comfortable for you as well. Again, as I just explained, my name is Jim Elliott, and I'm the Memory Marketing VP for Samsung Semiconductor in America HQ. It is my honor to be here to present to you today at the 2014 Global SSD Summit. My first presentation, you were lucky or unlucky enough to hear from me twice today. My first presentation will be over covering what we call IT market trends. So let's get started, shall we? So let's think about the IT growth drivers that the industry has been experiencing over the last several years. We've gone from a PC era in the 90s to a wired internet era in 2000 to a mobile internet era recently, moving into what we call the IoT, Internet of Things or Internet of Everything. We're looking now at 50 billion devices connected by 2020. But the key is, let's think about the impact that the mobile internet is having on our lives and on society. What evidence do we have that the mobile internet is really taking shape across the globe? Think about going to a concert, right? Back when I was growing up, this is what everybody did at a concert. You had a lighter, you held it up, you waved it around. Now in the era of the mobile internet, people pulled their smartphones up. Perhaps you can do that a little bit later tonight. Movie night, that time where the family comes together and watches TV, right? Well, not anymore. In the mobile internet era, everyone is watching their own screen. Did you know that it is possible to tell somebody's marital status by observing how they utilize some of the devices of this mobile internet era? Dinner conversation, you can see, again, completely changed. And now back to that marital status. Married or dating? This couple here, let's think about it. Checking Facebook, checking Twitter, checking email, probably married. The single couple, no phones, wine glasses. Again, think of the impact. This is my favorite example, the papal inauguration. Same photo, same event, right? Exact same place, same location. Think of this as a time machine of sorts. 2005. Now can you imagine what this is going to look like in 2013? A sea of mobile devices. This is really what embodies that mobile internet, and as we segue from that into the Internet of Things. So think about your own lifestyle now with these connected devices, digital cameras, smartphones, tablets, watches, ultrabooks. And now think about the impact of social networking that's really the glue that brings a lot of these devices together. Facebook, more than 9 billion page views per day now. These slides need to be updated on almost an hourly basis based on how fast the numbers are growing. KakaoTalk, right? Local Korean message service, more than 5 billion messages per day and over 500 million tweets per day. That's a lot of data. Think about now the time that it took to reach 50 million users. It took television 13 years to get there. Internet, 4 years. Facebook, 3.5.
draw something 50 days. So the pace of change is increasing dramatically. In fact, 91% of adults have mobile phones within arm's reach 24/7. In case you got that work phone call or you need to check that Facebook status, it's right there in the mobile internet era. Now think about this proliferation of devices all around this central data center or server and the infrastructure requirements that that amount of users, that amount of data starts to drive. We call this the era of data explosion or the data explosion era. Think about that mobile traffic growth for a minute. More connections, more users, faster speeds, and more video. By 2018, we're looking at 10 billion devices or more generating 190 exabytes of traffic. Now, 190 or an exabyte is a rather esoteric term, so let's give you an analogy here. 5 exabytes represents the entire amount of data created from the dawn of civilization until 2003. And remember, we're going to be creating 190 in just 1 year. 1 exabyte, for anyone who doesn't have an exabyte drive in their laptop yet, can store about 13,000 years of HD video or almost 5 trillion ebooks. So looking at this data explosion from a mobile traffic standpoint, we're looking at a 100 times increase in mobile traffic from 2011 to 2020. And commensurate with that, from a storage standpoint, about a 21x increase in IT storage requirements to connect and move all this data around with these billions of users and billions of devices. Think about YouTube now. More video is uploaded to YouTube in 1 month, just 1 month, than the major 3 US networks created in 60 years. That's the pace of change that the industry is experiencing right now. Now let's look at this new data storage era. Some of the key IT concerns. TCO is an acronym that we love to throw around, right? Total cost of ownership. Power consumption, space limitation, quality of service. These are all sort of core to the CIO and CTO's line for infrastructure planning. Obviously, you want less power, you want a smaller footprint to take advantage of finite real estate, and you need higher performance. So how is this possible? With NAND flash memory, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So think about how NAND has disrupted so many different devices that you're all so familiar with. Just a few years ago, things were tape-based, and then they went to hard drive-based. CE devices have been revolutionized by NAND flash. Think about now in the data center and server space where stacks of hard drives can be replaced with a single SSD. We'll give you much more detail on this later on this afternoon. And I like to use the word ubiquity, NAND flash ubiquity. It's everywhere. NAND flash is now an integral part of virtually every CE device out there and is now making significant inroads into that data center and server infrastructure in order to power all those CE devices. So think about the NAND market growth for a minute here. We're looking at 50 billion 1 gigabyte equivalents in 2014, and you can see that growth continuing up and to the right. You can see the distribution by end application becoming more diversified. SSD now solidly in the number 2 position, with the expectation that that will increase in the future. Building on that, from an SSD standpoint, in the PC space, we're looking at about a 5x growth from a gigabyte perspective, from 14 to 18. And look at the data center, server, enterprise side, over 8x increase. Again, as SSD continues to evolve and improve, it will continue to disrupt more and more industries. So let's talk for a minute about Samsung's leadership in the NAND flash memory industry. So we've got about 34%, 35% market share in the NAND space, about 47% market share in the SSD space currently. Give you a couple milestones. In 2006, anybody buy one of these PCs? The world's first SSD-based PC. It had a 32 gigabyte SLC SSD in it. about 14 bucks a gigabyte. Love to sell you some more of those if anyone is interested. 2008, launched the world's first MLC-based SSD. Again, reducing that cost for broader, more widespread adoption. 128 gigabytes now, it's starting to make inroads into the PC space for the low price of 5 bucks a gigabyte. Then we move into the 3-bit era in 2012. This was 2 years ago. Continuing to drive prices down, densities up. 500 gigabytes now, starting to really chase HDDs in the PC space, breaking the $1 per gigabyte barrier, very significant milestone. Technology complexity. One of the big challenges that the industry has upon us now, from a NAND flash perspective, is that technology is reaching diminishing returns. Therefore, another approach is needed for the future, for sustainable technology innovation. CapEx, accordingly, is becoming more expensive, more investments needed with, again, diminishing returns from a litho perspective. And at the same time, those gains that we've been getting where we could double density every year are starting to erode as well. So we do need a new approach to build the foundation of the future on. So really the core here we want to talk about today is disruptive technology is what is required to satisfy capacity, cost, and reliability requirements. Was anyone in the audience here at the Flash Memory Summit in San Jose last year? Let's see, all right. A few faithful folks out there. Nice to see you. We'll see you next month back in San Jose. So last year at the Flash Memory Summit on August 6th of 2013 in California, Samsung introduced the world's first 3D V-NAND flash memory. I had the honor of helping to give some of that presentation, and I think the response was overwhelming, given the core value proposition that SSD really brings to the table. So we are extremely excited about this new technology, and here to give you a little bit more detail and insight about 3D V-NAND technology, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. K.H. Kyung, who's SVP and the Flash Design Team Leader. So please welcome Dr. Kyung.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is K.H. Kyung, and I'm leading the Flash Design Team in Samsung Electronics. Last year, as Jim said, Samsung started mass production of 3D V-NAND for the first time in the world. And recently, we have successfully developed the second generation of V-NAND suitable for SSD. Today, I'm very proud to introduce to you our new innovative 3D V-NAND technology. Can you guess what this is? This is our 1x nanometer 128 gigabit 3-bit MLC device. Inside this chip, there are 4.3 billion cells, enough to 43 billion cells, enough to store 16 gigabytes of data. If we expand this tiny area, we can see this line of cells, a so-called string of and flashing. Why don't you take a closer look? This image shows an example of Samsung's 1x nanometer NAND flash memory cells. When designing those NAND flash cells, our mission is to shrink the size of them so that we can fit more cells into less space. That way, we can produce NAND flash memory with more and more capacity. This figure shows the history of our NAND flash memory cells. In 1999 is very important because the first storage with the NAND flash is equipped for IT device. Back to then, the design node was 120 nanometer. Through shrink technology, we have been able to reduce the design node down to the 10 nanometer class. The benefit of reducing cell size are vast. In 1999, with the 120 nanometer technology, we could only produce chips up to 1 gigabit. But now, with the 10 nanometer class design node, we can feed 64 times more cells in that same area to store 64 gigabit of data. Every time we shrink our cells smaller, we already face technical challenges. First, we need to develop design technology to prevent self-cell interference. And then we should find the right light source for photolithography process. Okay, let me explain a bit about self-cell interference first. Self-cell interference is when the state in a cell can affect the behavior of the adjacent cells because of a coupling effect. Generally, when the cells have a design node of 30 nanometer or more, self-cell interference can be easily controlled by design efforts. However, as the design node becomes smaller, like 1x nanometer, the probability of data corruption due to self-cell interference drastically increases. Put simply, if you think of a cell as your house, the narrower the space between your house and your neighbors, the more likely it is that you will be irritated from hearing all the noise your neighbors make. In this case, just as you would probably invest more money in installing soundproof walls, we need to put money into developing corresponding technologies to solve the problem of self-cell interference. Another task when shrinking is to find the right light source for photolithography used in patterning. This figure shows the fabrication process of a semiconductor device. After applying photoresist to the wafer, the next step is patterning the circuits with an appropriate mask. As the design is lowered, the pattern on the photo mask shrink as well. The light source for the 40 nanometer class design node can be used to inscribe the photo mask pattern on the wafer without any issues. However, this light source cannot penetrate the smaller pattern for the 1x nanometer class design node. So, we need to develop a light source with a shorter wavelength for 1x nanometer class pattern. The issue is the new equipment for 1x nanometer patterning requires huge investment. Thus, we try to find an alternative solution to overcome these two obstacles that I described. And we will finally be able to develop the world's first so-called 3D V-NAND. Thank you. Our research and development team thought long and hard about how to create a self-cell interference-free structure for more capacity even with large design nodes. It turns out the answer was very intuitive. We adopted the concept of a layer instead of a nanometer, and we found a way to layer the cells on top of one another. This is called 3D V-NAND. The V in V-NAND stands for vertical, and the name implies this is a three-dimensional structure. The idea of 2D planar NAND versus 3D V-NAND is similar to living in houses versus apartment buildings. If you want to increase the number of houses on one row, you'd have to build the house smaller, right? It's just like increasing the number of cells in 2D planar NAND. On the other hand, in case of apartment buildings, if we want more houses in the same area, we just need to add another floor without worrying about reducing the size of each apartment. This is what 3D V-NAND is all about. Alright, now so far, I described the basic concept of V-NAND. It is simple, isn't it? However, there is no free lunch. Some challenges are present when trying to design 3D V-NAND. To overcome them, three types of disruptive innovation are needed. These are material innovation, structural innovation, and integration innovation. These are completely different from the one used in planar NAND, but once they are developed, they lead to birth of 3D V-NAND. Let's start with the material innovation. Taking the example from before, when building a house, the main material you usually need is wood. However, to build a high-rise apartment, you need reinforced steel and cement. Just like that, the materials used in 2D NAND and 3D V-NAND are completely different. Instead of using conductors, V-NAND requires insulators, while conductors are similar to liquids and charges can move freely inside of them. Insulators are like solid and charges cannot move very well. Samsung has been researching DCTF or tri-track flashing technology for a long time, and we were able to acquire technology to commercialize it. Next, let's talk about structural innovation. What is the most obvious structural difference between these two, house and apartment? The answer is elevator. To move between floors, you must have an elevator, and the comfort of an apartment residence changes depending on how the elevator is installed. Similar to a rod connecting houses, a silicon substrate serves as a path between cells in 2D NAND. Likewise, just an elevator allows people to move between floors. A channel hole connects layers in 3D V-NAND. The image on the left side of the screen is the structure of a planar CTF NAND. The structure of 3D V-NAND is completely different from 2D NAND, as you can see from the right image on the screen. The structure makes it possible to arrange cells vertically. One thing you should remember is the storage. Storage insulator is covered by a control gate. The third innovation is integration. After developing the structural technology in 2008, we achieved A-lead stack in 2011, and 2 years later, we developed a commercialized 24-layer 3D V-NAND. Finally, we began mass production of a 32-layer V-NAND this year. Right now, I describe 3 innovation technology to make V-NAND. Then, does this 3D V-NAND provide a solution to shrinking problems? In 3D V-NAND, as I said before, because the control gate covers the cell, there will be no interference structurally. In other words, just like a soundproof wall that prevents noise, there will be no cell-to-cell interference. As I mentioned before, shrinking needs a sophisticated light source, but for V-NAND, we don't need it. The reason is the design rule of V-NAND is several times larger than planar. For example, take one piece from the array, in this case, 1/24, and make it 6 times larger, and stack it layer by layer. That's it. The left side and right side has the same density of 128 gigabit. But designer of flash NAND, the 3D V-NAND is 6 times larger. With innovation in 3D V-NAND technology, we could overcome the obstacle caused by 2D planar NAND, and we can even see some excellent benefit from V-NAND. One of the clearest improvement is the increasing capacity. With 2D NAND, even if we keep shrinking the chip to 1x, 1i, or 1z, it will be difficult to break past the 128 gigabit capacity that we enjoy today. However, we believe that we can develop V-NAND flash up to 1 terabit or more capacity with the 3D V-NAND technology. In other words, the maximum bit density of planar NAND can reach only the minimum of 3D V-NAND, even though the design rule of planar NAND touches the theoretical limits. Next is speed. By improving speed with 3D V-NAND will enhance people's lives. As I said before, we need to develop very precise program algorithm to prevent data corruption due to self-to-self interference in 3D planar NAND for smaller design rules. It means for less than 1x nanometer technologies, the data is written carefully using multiple write algorithms in order to avoid interference. As you can imagine, this takes some time. However, in 3D V-NAND, since self-self interference is almost free, we need only a simple algorithm to write data. Thanks to this, we can get approximately 2x faster write speed. Next, you can experience more endurance with 3D V-NAND. Endurance means how many times you can write to a given cell. The endurance characteristic is very dependent on electric field. Because of material and structural difference, the electric field for V-NAND is lower than planar NAND. This means that the V-NAND gets less stress than planar, which results in the longer endurance of V-NAND. Finally, 3D V-NAND leads to more power efficiency. Since the program algorithm for V-NAND has fewer steps, this saves on power consumption. As a result, we can consume just only 54% of energy consumption. So 3D V-NAND achieves almost twice the power efficiency. So far, I described the concept of 3D V-NAND. Just change the material and structure, and you get 3D V-NAND. Pretty simple, right? But why is Samsung the only company that can mass produce 3D V-NAND? It's because there were a lot of complications we faced when developing it. To explain the challenges, I will show you this figure again. We first obtained the CTF technology in 2006. After 2 years of investment in 2008, we developed the basic structure. After that, we devoted another 3 years and developed just 8 layers of technology in 2011. Then we spent another 2 more years and created the first commercialized 3D V-NAND in 2013. There is a lot of technology involved in this process. Today, I will explain the key process to you now. That is channel hole technology. Do you remember the biggest difference between apartment and the house that we talked about earlier? It was the elevator. Similar to elevators in apartment buildings, 3D V-NAND has changed channel holes. The right figure shows the top view of 3D V-NAND. You can see a lot of holes there. Then let's look at cross-sectional view of the channel holes. We can see that the channel is formed evenly from top to bottom. This is done through an etching process that requires very elaborate control and is a result of intense investment over many years. As the number of layers grows, the process becomes more and more difficult. It's the same concept of building elevators. It's much easier to build an elevator in a small apartment building like that. But how about this tall skyscraper? So far, I described the basic concept. Okay. But even more than this, a more important factor is how many elevators there are. Can you guess how many holes we need in 128 gigabit 3D V-NAND? We need to etch 50,000 holes evenly lengthwise and widthwise in one chip. That makes the total number of 2.5 billion holes for 120 gigabit V-NAND. So how big is this chip? The chip is about the size of your fingernail. Think about it, 2.5 billion holes in your fingernail. Okay then, how will this 3D V-NAND be used in the future and what role will it play in the industry? Nowadays, the IT world is changing from computing-centric to data-centric. And I believe that 3D V-NAND will be the ultimate solution for storage in data-centric world. Also, I believe 3D V-NAND can support the storage requirements for the data-centric world, so with more capacity, more speed, more endurance, and more power efficiency. It means 3D V-NAND will be the gateway to the upcoming terabyte era. Thank you for listening to my presentation. It has been my pleasure to show you how Samsung can enrich your lives with its innovative 3D V-NAND technology. Join Samsung and ride the elevator to new heights of innovation in the terabyte era. Thank you.
오랜만입니다. Long time no see. So I'm back for the second parts of my presentation, but again, thank you to Dr. Kyung for that wonderful overview of 3D V-NAND. The second portion of my presentation this afternoon is going to talk in more detail about Samsung's SSD leadership. So we'll do a deeper dive into the SSD space now. So if we start out by just looking at a very macro level of what the SSD market looks like, in 2014 it's about 15 million terabytes. That's a lot of NAND. 75% of that is comprised by the PC market. What's interesting is if you look to 2018, we're looking at almost 6 times larger from a market standpoint to almost 90 million terabytes. So look at the distribution now, right? We're starting to see more inroads into the data center area as we expect that segment to pick up a lot of the demand moving forward. So going back to the PC industry and drilling down here on some key trends that we're following here, that really fall into that sweet spot of some of these SSD and 3D V-NAND value propositions will lie. Portability, higher performance, and of course, never have enough higher capacity. So from a portability standpoint, it's obvious if you just look around the room at the different form factors of laptops that people are starting to use nowadays. Gone from the conventional laptop to the ultra-thin recently, now to this convertible, detachable, clamshell, these more hybrid type devices, which begs the question, where does the laptop end and where does the tablet begin? Commensurate with these changes, longer battery life is the expectation. We used to talk in the US about being able to go coast to coast on a single charge, right? 3 to 5 hours. Now you're talking about that flight that y'all came on if you came from the US or overseas. You could actually use your laptop that entire flight to blog about your experience at the Samsung Global Summit. So very exciting, 10 hours of battery life. So let's think about high performance now, right? Lots of multitasking, many different apps open at the same time, some games, some spreadsheets, some PowerPoint, some other files. The problem is CPU performance is scaling nicely with Moore's Law. HDD performance is not. That gap is widening and becoming significant, right? About 100x in 2010, perhaps 10,000x by 2020. This obviously is ripe for disruption and requires something new from a storage perspective. So let's think about higher capacity. 4K, 2K TVs, these are right around the corner. If you guys were at CES, you started to get a glimpse of the immersive experience that these TVs represent. And these high megapixel cameras and even smartphones are starting to offer now. All of this is putting additional constraint or additional pressure on SSD or storage capacity, and accordingly, SSD capacity is moving up from 169 gigabytes this year, potentially a CAGR of 30% per year for the next 4 or 5 years. So let's now look at the combination of these two PC and SSD trends. Flexible and efficient. One of the inherent beauties of NAND flash architecture is that it is form factor agnostic, right? It doesn't have to be in a 2.5. We've actually taken the size down dramatically into what we call an M.2 form factor. It's like a stick of gum, right? Just barely bigger than a quarter. More than a 99% reduction in volume compared to legacy storage platforms or form factors. And then of course lower power. You're talking about 1/3 the power consumption versus a hard drive. Perfect again for that aspect of portability. Now let's think about built for speed, right? The hard drive devices are really constrained by that physical limitation of that SATA interface. SSD, NAND flash rather, is actually outgrowing the SATA interface as we move into the PCIe space. And accordingly, we're looking at about a 20x improvement in mixed pattern performance. This is a mix of reads, writes, sequential, random, versus a hard drive, a 20x improvement. Again, perfect for high performance applications. Cost effective. We've gone from a 2-bit era, now we've moved recently into a 3-bit era. Every time we can continue to take cost out of the equation, obviously sets us up for more widespread consumer adoption as well as server and data center adoption. And this also allows us to make much higher capacity points, which are very important for many applications. So let's talk about some PC optimized SSDs now. So I want to share with you a couple of industry firsts that Samsung has had within the PC market, taking into account this M.2 form factor, 3-bit advancements, and then also PCIe. So let's talk about the first 3-bit SSD for PC. So this was the 840 and the 840 EVO. These launched 2 years and 1 year ago, respectively. And you can see those benchmark scores are actually extremely robust, especially when you consider a lot of these were being compared to 2-bit product. My favorite quote here is from Tom's. I don't know if that writer's in the audience. Very clever. More than evolution, cache me if you can. So that's one of my favorites. But the key is over 10 million shipments worldwide of 3-bit SSD from our branded product division. So this has, again, been a very successful product launch for us. Now let's talk about the first PCIe for SSD. So we're taking it up a notch. Last year, first generation client PCIe in 2013, 4-lane, Aki protocol. Second generation this year, client PCIe for 2014, that's NVMe based. This is going to be the next step in this disruptive evolution of NAND-based storage. This is my favorite quote. I can't wait for Samsung to release a retail version of the XP941, says Anantech. Well, I can't wait either, so we're all very excited about that. So let's briefly go over the benefits of that PCI interface. So from a SATA perspective to a PCIe. In SATA, 1 lane, 600 megabytes per second. PCIe, 4 lanes, up to 4,000 megabytes per second. As you can see, that gives you about a 7x improvement in bandwidth. Couple that with about a 3x improvement in latency. That's where you get those blazing fast speeds. Put those two things together and look at the benchmark results, about 1.5x on a certain benchmark when you compare SATA versus PCIe. So again, very disruptive performance. Now let's look at the first NVMe for PC. So what we want to say here is coming soon. So we're very excited to be working with our key OEM partners on having that first NVMe-based PC. You can see some of the performance specs that we're looking at the drive level, 2 to 3x versus SATA from a sequential read and write. Random read and write about 10 to 30%. And look at that idle power reduction, minus 80%. So again, back to that portability. The other thing I have to point out is we were very happy about receiving in Q1 of this year that L1.2 low power certification for NVMe. And this is really all about propagating the use of NVMe. And we did this in conjunction with our partners on the chipset and OS ecosystem. So let's talk briefly now about some data center industry trends. 3 key trends we want to pay attention to. Number 1, cloud service. There's that TCO acronym again, total cost of ownership. And third, virtualization. All very, very important within this space. So think about cloud services for a minute, right? It's all about optimizing that cloud service. This is that cloud computing is that platform for which all of these different devices are connected on a worldwide basis. And again, these have to be continuously optimized to drive that lightning fast internet, that reaction time that you're expecting with your mobile device, and also to drive cost out of the equation. So performance, power, and cost. Last year, SSD started to make tremendous inroads, but really for temporary storage, improved performance, maybe some caching. In 2014, though, we're actually starting to see SSDs for persistent storage. So this is kind of a key catalyst here for growth moving forward. And as you can see, our expectation is the SSD attach rate in a data center is going to start to increase dramatically here in the coming years. Down paging. Thank you. So let's talk now a little bit more about our total cost of ownership, or TCO. So if you look at that data center management cost, again, there's the CapEx, this is what you spend in the data center, then there's the OpEx. OpEx is a lot of that is power related, about 31% power related. If we drill down on that power management cost, you can see that about 17% of that is related to the storage, either SSD or HDD, plus the cooling. Now remember, SSDs, those things are running with virtually no heat. So the cooling requirements they have is dramatically lower than what a 15 or even a 10K hard drive would have. I'm going to try this again. All right. Virtualization, another key trend in the industry right now. Again, traditional architecture, very simple. Application, single OS, single physical resource. Now with virtualization, multiple applications, multiple operating systems over a virtual machines, sharing that physical resource. So again, that shared storage pool is now being amplified and hit much harder with this heavy, we call large-scale transactions. Lots of different data requests, lots of transactions, lots of volume, same finite amount of storage. So the key here is virtualization is going to drive both performance as well as big storage requirements. Both of these are right in the sweet spot of the SSD value proposition that we're going to be talking about today. So let's talk about data center SSD trends now for a moment. First one, high performance, right? Can't get enough. And really the key here, it's all about that transition from SATA to NVMe from an interface perspective. As we mentioned, from a bandwidth perspective, about 7x increase. Latency about 1/3, so much faster, much better bandwidth. We like to say that NV really allows, or it unleashes the true performance capability of NAND flash. There's no more bottleneck when we move from SATA into the NVMe PCIe space. Cost effectiveness. Of course, cost effectiveness is always going to be key, especially for widespread adoption, right? 3-bit SSD is going to be core to that. Let's look at this case study example. We take an HDD-based server, which is on the left, right? About 40,000 concurrent users. concurrent user, about 40,000. Power consumption, you can see there, and then the server quantity, about 10,000 servers to service those 40,000 users. Now, if we take the hard drive out, same server, same cost, and replace that with an SSD, you get about a 60% increase in the number of concurrent users that server can support. At the same time, you're going to have a 12% decrease in power, and actually a 22% decrease in the amount of servers that you need to deploy. So again, this is where we like to talk about that TCO. NAND is extremely disruptive because it hits on all these pain points. So SSDs and data centers will bring significant TCO reduction. So building more on that power reduction, again, think about that stack of 20 hard drives, and the same performance can be gained or realized with a single SSD that uses 1/60th of the power. So it's really not even fair anymore, right? So we like to say 1/60th the power with the same performance is really beyond comparison. And that's really where we're going with this. So now let's take a look at some of the data center optimized SSDs that Samsung has been offering. Many world's firsts or industry first SSDs in the data center market, capitalizing on these key trends of NVMe, 3-bit, and low power. So the first of which is the first 3-bit SSD for data center. Again, we launched our first data center SSD in 2012. That was 2-bit. This year we're looking at the 3-bit launch. Again, very, very excited about that. We call that the TCO optimized 3-bit SSD for data center. And here's the interesting thing. TLC, which is 3-bit based SSD, no trouble ranking near the top of the pack ahead of even some MLC based competitors. That's how confident we are of this new technology. We're actually also very proud of this. First NVMe now for servers and data centers. We worked with our partners at Dell, launched the world's first NVMe server in March of this year. We pulled this ad right off of their website. They're showing about a 15x faster performance with NVMe compared to a 10K SAS hard drive. And again, we actually were able to achieve the world's first NVMe interoperability certification. This is something that the University of New Hampshire drives, and it's really to proliferate and make sure that that NVMe technology and ecosystem continues to propagate in the future. We like to call the SM953 the first power optimized NVMe for the data center. You can look at the specs there. We're taking that down to active power of about 6 watts. That's anywhere from a 40 to a 75% reduction in power for what we like to call optimized TCO. And again, that's the world's first NVMe Integrators 1.1 interoperability certification. So we're very aggressive in pushing, again, that ecosystem to make sure that the NVMe is deployed as widely as possible. And now let's talk about the continued leadership that we will have with 3D V-NAND. Again, as we just saw, there's 4 core benefits of V-NAND. More capacity, we're saying 2x and beyond. Initially just 2x, but again, we can scale that. It's all about that scalability. From a speed perspective, we can do twice as fast compared to planar. Endurance-wise, we're talking 10x, and power efficiency more than double as efficient as planar NAND. So really disruptive on every single metric. So let's talk about capacity. Again, we can go from single terabyte, coming soon to 2 terabyte, and there's really no end in sight for how that capacity can increase moving forward. Target applications, ultra-thin laptop, and storage systems, anything that needs high capacity. Now let's look at ultra-high performance. Again, as we go on that interface from SATA to NVMe, 7x improvement from an interface standpoint, and the NAND core will increase double. So again, it's going to be able to take advantage of that new interface as we move into an NVMe era. Target applications, front-end servers, and caching servers, any application that has high performance requirements. Let's talk about endurance now. This is a great story if you think about it, right? Going from planar 2-bit to 3D NAND, that's a 10x improvement. But what's interesting here is if you look at 3D VNAND, The endurance is actually higher than SLC. And remember, SLC was always the gold standard for high endurance. And now 3D V-NAND can eclipse even the endurance levels of SLC SSD. Target applications being OLTP, database servers, anything that has a very write-intensive application. It's perfect for V-NAND. And ultra-low power, again, compared to a hard drive, we're looking at about a 1/5 power consumption utilizing 3D V-NAND. Of course, target applications back to that laptop for battery life, and then wonderful TCO for that data center from an OpEx perspective. So in conclusion, Samsung has been the world's #1 SSD supplier for many, many years. On the PC space, we've had lots of innovations with 3-bit SSD, PCI SSD, and now NVMe SSD. On the data center side, again, very, very aggressive in driving 3-bit as well as NVMe in the future. And really we want to build upon this foundation and continue that leadership position by utilizing 3D V-NAND, which is why we're here today. We're very excited to talk about it. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for your attention, and I look forward to a very successful conference. 감사합니다. Thank you.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of session 1. We hope that it was insightful and you got well acquainted with Samsung's next generation SSD technology and products. All right, well, refreshments are available in the lobby for you. We will recommence the summit at exactly 3 o'clock. That should give you approximately 30 minutes. In the second session, we will have presentations of the newest products of 2014 from Samsung SSD. Please enjoy your intermission.